Welcome to Ex Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining on this edition of Ex Machina. I want to start out by saying a big thank you to everybody, all the well wishes and kind words and encouragement I've been getting over the last few weeks. I'm on the mend. I'm not 100%, but I'm a hell of a lot better than I was even a few days ago. They're getting my meds straightened out, keeping the fluid drained off. They're switching things up a little bit on adding some medications, but overall I feel pretty good. So fingers crossed, knock on wood, the whole 9 yards. Hopefully I'm back for the duration, and things are back to abnormal, at least as far as they go, with my world. My mother-in-law is still in the hospital. Appreciate all y'all asking about her. She's doing better, but she's 73 years old, so they're taking their time, and she's still on oxygen, but she is improving, and hopefully they'll have her home in the next few days. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, and I appreciate all y'all's prayers and kind wishes. Appreciate y'all so much. Joining me in the studio tonight is Robbie Rip Rains. Kerry Pocket Doc Davis couldn't be with us tonight. He was not feeling well. He's got fighting a sinus infection, so keep your prayers on Doc. Hopefully he'll be back with us on Saturday, as will Steve. Noah's lurking in the background. My son Noah, Jorgamunder on Twitch and on other stations as well. So he's in the background. You can say shout out and give him a hi, and there he is. And yeah, he's lurking. Only word of caution tonight, folks, is I might have to disappear a little more often than I usually do, because I'm on a pretty heavy diuretic, and when I have to run across the hall to the little writer's room, it's one of those you got to go now. So yeah, when the diuretic speaks, I must go. So there may be a few moments when Robbie has to take over, but I'm sure he can handle it and Noah jump in if he needs it. But Robbie, how the hell you doing, man? I ain't talked to you in a month of Sundays, it feels like.
I know, it's been a while. Well, I mean, we've talked on text, but it's the first time we've kind of been on camera for a while. So yeah, doing good. I had the same thing Doc had on yesterday. I had to take a day out of work yesterday because you wake up in the morning, it's 29 degrees, and then you go home in the afternoon, it's 66.
That's the weather around here anymore. Yeah. I mean, we always joke here in Missouri, a lot of places get 4 seasons in a year. We can get them in an afternoon.
Yeah. Well, you used to have that joke about Florida. If you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes. It's now become South Carolina. You don't like the weather, just wait 10 minutes. We're a little bit higher elevation than they are in the mountains, so it takes a little bit longer for the weather to get up where we're at. But seriously, I went to work Monday, and it was 22 degrees by the time I got to the school. And then when I left work that afternoon at 3:30, it was almost 70. So it went from 22 to 70 in an 8-hour span.
It's been doing crap like that around here. I mean, it's like in the 40s now. No, it's still 62. I'm sorry. It was last night. It was like in the upper 20s last night, and today it was 75. I mean, it's freaking nuts around here.
Yeah.
And then even a week. Yeah, it was a week ago. Monday, we had snow hit us. I mean, I know it's February, but god dang.
I think that groundhog was smoking crack when he made his prediction.
Maybe somebody should just eat that groundhog.
Maybe so.
I've never had groundhog. I bet it'd be greasy.
Yeah, I had to give it up because of the cholesterol. Like Eddie had to give the squirrels up. I had to give up the groundhog. He heard they're high in cholesterol, Clark, so he had to give them up.
So how things been out south Crackalacky way? How you been, man?
Been good. And just rolling along, doing the kitty policing thing, and enjoying the schedule. Doing some laser and stuff, and just we're back rolling with what's really out there. We got episodes coming out. I think last Friday, our episode on Norse mythology possibly should have dropped, or some files got crossed up. So our welcome back show was actually like third in line instead of first in line, because for some reason when Tyler saved it, it saved the goodbye show as something completely different. So it saved the vampire show twice. So when I got it and I downloaded everything, put it in, I always try to listen to everything when I'm getting it ready to go. So I queued up the first one, and I was like, well, that's vampire. I need to switch it. So I said, well, I'm going to listen to the other one first. Let's do it. Exact same show. So I called Tyler. I said, hey, we got a problem.
Something wrong here.
I said, we got two
Patty,
vampires.
I know exactly how you feel, little Patty. It's yeah. When it decides, and the crazy thing is in Missouri, we don't get a whole lot of snow anymore. When I was a kid, we used to get a lot of snow, but anymore it's just ice.
Yeah, it used to snow here at least 2 or 3 times a year, and we're lucky now if we get one snow a year. I mean, here we are in February 21st, and we ain't even seen the first snow flurry.
We've had a couple of minor snows, 4 or 5 inches, nothing insane. But I remember times when I was a kid when we would get foot and a half of snow. I don't know if it's weather change or climate change or whatever the hell you want to call it, but it seems like we get more ice than anything else, and the ice is the dangerous stuff.
Oh yeah,
it's hard to drive on. It brings down power lines and tree branches. Hell, it seems like every winter we're cutting up a branch in the back of the house. I still got one back there we ain't finished cutting up. 3D Havoc wants to see some of your laser art projects, man.
No, I just happen to have something sitting right here. There we go.
Ooh, I like that.
That's the one I showed you, Odin and Hugin and Munin.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I think that's all I got right here, in which you probably got a few things right there close to you, don't you?
Well, if they're close to the table. Oh, yeah, there's this one. It's got the
there it is. You can see it now.
The Dark Frontiers on one side, and Team Odin on the other. Robbie did that on my Gunner's Mate.
Cool.
I saw somebody posted earlier that they just got their bounty.
And I got our glasses.
Mm-hmm. Mine's over here. I got a different glass tonight. It looks like a skull.
So yeah, I can laser on a little bit of everything there, 3D.
Phil Kroll says, sent an email a bit ago about the Monty's 10-foot plane sphere of 1578. Definitely check that out. I'll look forward to that. Thank you. Miss Bowers, K. Bowers, 8111 says, DA and Robbie, how y'all are? Well, as they say, I'd be pretty good.
Tolerable.
I was doing any better, I'd be twins.
So, but yeah, been doing good. Hey, glad you're back to being on the mend.
Yeah, I feel a lot better than I did. I mean, I'm breathing pretty good. I feel like I was, even after I got out of the hospital, I was in the hospital again a week ago Wednesday. A week ago Wednesday.
Yep, that's what you told me.
And I had a lot of fluid built back up. And after they gave me a big shot of Lasix and cycled that out, even after I got home, I was breathing a lot better, but I still felt kind of a heaviness in my chest. And when I went to my doctor's appointment on Monday with the cardiologist, they increased one med and then added a new one. And I can't remember what it's called. I'm terrible with, especially those big, long medical names. But they added another one, and since then, I've been hitting the bathroom like once an hour, every hour. Even at night, I get up like, oh crap, gotta go. But since then, I mean, I really feel like there's room to breathe. Like I can take a deep breath. I went out. Noah and I went out to film today. We were going to film a promo video for this show. It was a beautiful day, but unfortunately, about everybody else in the state of Missouri had that same idea, and we couldn't find any place with a good like creek or a river in the background that didn't have 35 people at it. 3D Havoc says, "You look thinner, DA." Like I need some chicken wings. We just had chicken wings last night. Oh, good. Boneless chicken wings from Pizza Hut. They're pretty damn good. But yeah, I think what you're thinking about me looking thinner is the wife was tired of my beard getting so shaggy. It was actually shaggier than Robbie's, and I took the beard trimmer to it finally. Two reasons: one, it was getting pretty unmanageable, and two, my oldest son's getting married in just over a month, and I thought it was time to finally tame the tumbleweed so I look decent in a suit. Robert D says, DA, have you heard about the 1967 KC Bearman attack that killed a girl's friend? Dude, I have not. If you've got information on that, send that over. That would definitely be something I'd be interested in.
What if that's in relation to Man Bear Pig?
Man Bear Pig could be. And Sam Squatch.
The Sam Squatch. So what are we talking about tonight?
We're talking about some new information that has come to light on the Dyatlov Pass incident. And this is the real kicker. There are two other incidents. There are two other incidents that are documented that are eerily similar to the Dyatlov Pass incident. And we'll be going over both of those incidents as well. But the first thing we're gonna discuss about Dyatlov Pass is Annette and I were watching documentaries, which we do from time to time. We'll find like new cryptid documentaries or new like mystery stories, or we love all those mysterious shows. We found one that had just came out. It was called The Yeti Attack of Dyatlov Pass or something like that. I'd have to look up the exact title. And of course, the title is a little misleading, but turns out that a major forensic pathologist in Russia started digging into the case again because he didn't believe the official story that it was an avalanche that killed him. Because that's when they reopened it in 2019, that's what the Russians said the official story was, that it was an avalanche that killed that party. But this documentary brought a lot of stuff to light that I didn't know. Things that made it very, very bizarre. The first thing is there was a guy assigned to I say assigned. He really was. Originally there were 9 hikers that were going out, and they were all in their early 20s. The Dyatlov 9 hikers, they were experienced hikers. They'd gone through this area through experienced long nature treks, hiked mountains. These were not newbies to this kind of survival hiking. They'd done it many times. But at the last minute, a 10th guy was pushed on them by the Russian government. They were strongly encouraged to take this guy with them. And his name was Semyon Alexandrovich Zolotaryov.
That don't sound ominous.
My Russian is not great. Simon Alexandrovich Zolotaryov. He was 38.
That just sounds like a Bond villain.
Yeah, it does. He does sound like a Bond villain. But he was, the local Russian government said, you need to take this guy with you. And at first they didn't trust the guy. I mean, they thought he was a plant for some reason. They didn't have a clue why the communist government would insist they take this guy with them. And when his body was found, now remember back in 1950, what was this, 58 when this happened, or 53?
Yeah. Sometime between 53 and 56, I believe.
59.
Okay, I was wrong. I was wrong.
Yeah. In 59, in Russia, cameras were obscenely expensive. This guy had 2, which is unheard of. When his body was found, it was found with 2. They had a 10th member of the group, but he got sick and had to turn back a couple of days into the hike. His name was Yuri Yefimovich Yudin. And he passed away in 2013. He lived to a grand old age. But the 9 that passed away, including 8 friends and this one guy, the Russian government pushed off on them. And they theorized that he was sent along to document what they knew was going to happen. They think that the Russians knew damn good and well that this area was known for hostile Yeti activity. And this pathologist, when he re-examined all the autopsy photos, he pointed out, he said, a lot of these are not wounds that could be caused by an avalanche. These are crush damage. These people have had their rib cages crushed and their internal organs basically just squished. So, a avalanche doesn't do that. It tends to bury people and they suffocate. A couple of them died of severe skull trauma. One had her tongue torn out. Avalanches don't tear out people's tongue and eyes. That's a primate thing.
And generally, like we were talking about earlier, avalanches, obviously, some have, but for the most part, by and large, avalanches don't kill by crushing; they kill by suffocation.
Born Not to Run says, "Why did they go? Was it just for fun, or was there a reason?" That was just what they did for fun. This group of 9 friends went hiked in some of the more rugged outback areas of Russia, up and through the Ural Mountains. And this was a time when not many people were doing this. I mean, you had some of the like Sir Edmund Hillary expeditions up into the Himalayas and stuff, but this wasn't something you could just pop down to the store and pick up some North Face cold weather gear. Most of their gear that they made, their Arctic survival gear, they made it themselves. So this is something they love to do. And they dedicated a big chunk of their lives. David By says the Mansi have considered the area evil for centuries. In fact, the mountain that Dyatlov Pass goes through is called Kolyat Sakal. Kolyat Sakal means mountain of the dead in Mansi. The Mansi said it's a cursed place. We don't go there. And it's funny that you would bring up the Mansi, David, because in this documentary, they found an eyewitness. They found something that no one else had ever even come close to finding. Even the Russian government. They spoke to a Mansi woman who was in her probably 80s. She was a young girl when the Dyatlov Pass incident happened, and they warned them that they had already had people from the village go missing. And she was out hunting with her parents, and they could hear the screams on the mountain. They knew that party was under attack. So they didn't necessarily see the attack itself, but from the screams and the roars they heard, they knew they were under attack by something. And what they call the Yeti the Mink, M-E-N-K, in Mansi. And they had warning signs carved into trees telling people to stay out of the area. The Mansi knew to avoid that area, but this group stumbled right into it, right into the heart of aggressive Yeti territory. And after some of the evidence that I saw, I used to think that, maybe there had to be some sort of physical explanation. Maybe it was, a Russian experiment or something, but there's just no sign of that. And one of the pieces of evidence that the Russians pointed out, to indicate that it was an avalanche, was that they had cut their way out of the tent and fled without taking any of their gear, as if they were running from something for their lives. But when rescuers came looking for them, they found the tent still on the ground. If there'd been an avalanche coming down the mountain, that tent would have been buried. They may not have ever found it. And most of the people they found were very near the surface of the snow. So it's not like they... I think the documentary was called The Yeti Attack of Dyatlov Pass or something. I'll look it up here shortly and get you the exact name. And I'll let you know what streaming service we found it on. I believe it was Max, which is HBO Max. I believe that's where we caught it, but I may have to pop out and ask Annette. I'll have her. In fact, I'll just text message her here in a minute and have her look it up for me. But it's fantastic documentary, by the way. One of the things this forensic pathologist found when he examined the evidence from the scene was evidence on the tent, evidence the Russians had not released before. And this is the part that I find really, really compelling. Yes, there was evidence that they had cut their way out from the inside and fled. They had left most of their cold weather gear inside the tent and ran, some of them without shoes on, knowing full well that in those temperatures, they weren't going to last long. And the groups scattered. They broke into smaller groups. One of the first ones to die was Dyatlov. You go to Dyatlov. He was 23 years old when he died. and he had defensive wounds on his hands and arms and wrists that he was fighting something. So I got to give that guy props. Whatever it was that killed him, and I still think I'm leaning toward Yeti. He fought hard. He did not go down easy, and he died of skull fracture. But he had defensive wounds. The official cause of death on Dyatlov was hypothermia, and that was listed as the official cause of death on most of them by the Russian government. But thanks to this pathologist, that's changing because Dyatlov had defensive wounds and a crushed skull. So you can't tell me hypothermia caused a crushed skull and defensive wounds. Great documentary. But when he examined the tent, this is what I found most intriguing. Yes, there was a cut on the tent where they cut their way out, actually multiple cuts where they cut their way out and ran as fast as they could. But you know what else was on the tent that was never put out before? Numerous horizontal cuts that were about an inch long at eye level in the tent so they could peek out of the tent. They knew something was coming.
Well, and you probably watched this one too, but one of the documentaries that I watched, and obviously this is all hypothesis because nobody knows for sure, but people have hypothesized that they felt like they were being followed by whatever this was for a day or two at least. So that right there, what you just said, if they knew something was out there, something was following them, that stands to reason that you're going to cut those slits so you can look, and all of a sudden you see it.
There's two pieces of evidence to back that up too, Robbie. I'm glad you pointed out. There are two very distinct pieces of evidence. If you're trained, these people were experienced Arctic survival, hikers and had been in this kind of environment many times before. Why did they camp out in the open instead of among the trees? They were afraid to camp in the trees. And number two, what they call photograph number 17. Photograph number 17 depicts something dark and human shaped on the trail behind them. One of them turned around and snapped a picture.
Yep.
And what they got looks very much like a dark colored Bigfoot or a Yeti. Let me see if I can find the image, and I will show the image.
But yeah, I want to say in like most of the things that I've watched about that's what people say is they for like at least a day, if not more, felt like something was stalking them. I don't know if they ever speculated what it was, but they said one trail expert said that what you were talking about where they camped didn't make any sense. The path that they were taking was more like a zigzag path instead of just hiking straight up the mountain, which would use a lot more energy in the terrain that they were in. If you're going like this, you're using a lot more energy.
That is image 17.
Yeah, there's the Russian government came in really quick and covered up a lot of this.
Oh yeah.
Stuff real quick. And the standard reason, if they planted this guy and they kind of knew what was going on, that's why they're going to come in there and smooth it all over and sweep it under the rug.
Roxanne found it. She says it's called Yeti Massacre on Max, and apparently she's got it on hers to watch now too. It is a great documentary, one of the best I've seen. And I was pretty hardcore in the corner that there had to be a logical explanation to this. And you guys know I'm firmly in the believer category when it comes to Bigfoot and creatures like that. But Dyatlov, because they kept saying avalanche and things like that, I was kind of thinking maybe this just was some sort of really tragic accident. But after watching that documentary, I'm like, oh my God, all of this stuff is, Robbie, how do you put it? This is what we call a clue. Some of this stuff is really compelling.
Well, there's all kinds. We've got the Patterson-Gimlin footage. You've got the Sierra Sounds. You've got to put this incident up there with one of the most well-known and by far the probably the most eerie and tragic of all Bigfoot encounters. I don't know. I mean, you throw the beast of LBL in there, obviously that family that got, but that is what it is. Possibly a dogman or a werewolf, which you would expect something like that. But for a Bigfoot incident, this is probably the most morbid and terrifying documented encounter there is.
And when they talked to that Mansi elder, her name was Albina Anyamova. She was not far away from that area when it happened. She said that her whole family, that people from their village, children and adults, had been going missing for several days, and they'd warned the crew, the Dyatlov crew, that you're going into a dangerous area. Kolyatsikal is called the Mountain of the Dead for a reason. But they went anyway. They probably just dismissed the local legends and didn't think too much of it. But within the Mansi hunting party, again, Albina Anyamova said they heard the screams of people being killed and the roars of whatever was attacking them. That's not to me, that right there, there's no way that's an avalanche.
Yeah. And Robert, to answer your question, yeah, Ape Canyon was terrifying. I'm sure to those people, but most of them
Nobody
made it
died.
out.
Yeah, nobody died.
9 people.
Yeah. And the funny thing is yes, we've got all this forensic evidence, but even today, the Russians will not allow the bodies to be exhumed.
Anytime the government steps in and does something like that, there's more to it than what is being said. Because what was it Reagan said? The scariest words in the English language were to hear. I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
We're here to help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert D says, is it still an open case? The Russians consider it a closed case. They made their official statement in 2019, but this pathologist, I can't remember his name. He's one of the most respected forensic pathologists in Russia, is digging into it personally, and he does not at all buy the official story that this was an avalanche. Audacious Amber says, "Isn't there? Yeah, there. Some of them were missing eyes. Some of them there was one that was definitely missing a tongue. Skulls crushed and rib cages crushed, as if something had grabbed a hold of them and crushed them. Internal organs were popped. That doesn't happen in an avalanche. And had there been an avalanche, the campsite would have been covered. And when the rescuers got there, like 2 weeks later, the tent was still on top of the snow." Eric Saab says the Russian Yetis they either call it the Alma or the Almasty, but the Mansi call it, excuse me, the Mansi call it the Mink, MENK. Audacious Amber says radiation burns. Some of them that had mild radiation burns on them, but that could possibly be explained by the fact that 2 of them worked in a radioscopy lab. Oh, yeah. Roxanne Delgado says, D, have you seen the video of the 2 boys that got one? Yeah, that video is terrifying. That thing scares the crap out of those kids. Casey Calloway says, no, I'm sorry. It was Vicky Dennison says, does everyone think the Patty film is real or fake? I think it's real. I personally believe it's real.
There is so much. If you break that film down, and Jesus has broke it down.
MK Davis has done an amazing job.
But Jesus and I had a face-to-face. We were both sitting across from each other on the table, or right next to each other on the table, and Jesus was breaking it down and showing piece by piece. And even the guy who made the suits for the thing that was closest to that at that time, made the suits for Planet of the Apes. That guy said, what we made was the most realistic thing that could be made at that time.
By that technology level.
By that technology. And you're talking about a guy who was in the movie industry and said, we couldn't have made anything that looked like that.
Yeah. Justin Oldfart says ravens or crows can take out the eyes, but a tongue is harder to take out. Yeah, I do agree. Ravens and crows can take out eyes, but the thing about the tongue is when the original autopsy notes were reviewed, and this pathologist had the original autopsy notes, the tongue on the woman had been taken out before she was killed because there was a significant quantity of her own blood in her stomach, which means she was aspirating her own blood. Yep. That tongue was torn out while she was alive. Oh, thanks, Noah. Alma, and the Almasty is a term in Mongolian folklore. Russians typically call it the chuchuna. Again, we can add the mink to that because there are a lot of Mansi living in Russia. Thanks for pulling that up, Noah. But there's just so much about this. When they started presenting it, it just started raising so many red flags for me. But I don't think it's anything even remotely what they're trying to tell us it was.
That's obvious.
The way they found some of the bodies, some of the bodies were piled on top of each other in a creek. That doesn't happen accidentally.
No. Even an avalanche, they could have been standing side by side or in a line on an avalanche, and the chances of them ending up in the same place if they got swept away by an avalanche are astronomical.
And to find 4 of them in a pile?
Yeah.
Yeah, the odds of that are, geez, astronomical, exactly. But, when we start examining the evidence again, and some of the stuff that was never brought to light before, like the little eye slits that were cut in the tent, it paints a whole different picture of these people, these folks' last days. And then you talk about photo number 17, where it shows that dark figure leaning out from behind a tree behind them on the trail. And supposedly, according to the journals, that picture was taken by somebody that just spun around, took the picture because they knew they were being followed. They had a feeling something was following. He just turned around, snapped a picture, and went on with what they were doing. They probably didn't even know it was there. Michelle N says, lesson, if the locals say it's dangerous, believe them and don't do it. I'm right there with you.
Well, and that's the problem you get on a lot of these things is you have these locals who are in this situation. They live with this stuff every single day of their life. But you get these people in there who think they know more or of what's going on. They're more sophisticated. All these, these backwoods hicks don't know what they're talking about type stuff. And they get into these situations and then, oh my God, what happened? Well, you should have listened is what happened.
No kidding.
I mean, how many bad disaster and scary movies start out like that? Well, the people who think they know better going into a situation where somebody that lives there says, hey, don't go up there.
I think, and this is just me personally, I think that what we're dealing with that's causing these attacks, whether you call it Bigfoot, Yeti, Sasquatch, whatever you call it, I think since we know that there are different types of them, I think at least some of them may be relic populations from Neanderthal. Because if you look at the book about Them and Us by Danny Vendramini, the reconstruction they did of a Neanderthal, it looks like a modern Sasquatch. It doesn't look anything like the crap they put in museums, because most of the reconstructions they did of Neanderthal skulls back in the day were done by scientists who put a heavy bias on making these things look as human as possible. But when Danny Vendramini had a modern reconstruction done of a Neanderthal skull, it looks terrifying.
Well, but and we've talked about this on the shows we've had before. What was it, the Peking man, where they did all that. Mm-hmm. The tooth was fine. I mean, once they actually started doing tests on it, that was a pig's tooth.
Right.
But like you said, that they have their agenda that they want us to follow, and if we're not following that agenda of what they want us to believe and what they want us to think, then you start getting all the stuff. Oh, they're crazy. You don't need to listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. But the more you start delving into this, like you said with that book, things really start lining up a lot more.
Yeah. And and a lot of people will completely ignore that book. They claim it's not properly scientifically vetted and things like that. But anytime something is done that breaks the current scientific mold, it's always attacked. People always claim this guy doesn't have the qualifications, blah blah blah. But a lot of times it turns out these guys are right.
Well, but it's no different than when you go into a museum and you see a Tyrannosaurus Rex that obviously they can put the bones back together, but when they skin it and they color it and they do all this stuff,
that's just guesswork.
Yeah, exactly. So for somebody to sit there and say, "Well, this is what it looked like," that is sheer stupidity. Because unless you were standing there and saw one, you don't know what it looks like. And all bones can tell you is the general shape of what something was.
Right.
It's not going to tell you what it looked like with muscle, skin, hair, things like that. So for them to sit there and argue with people and say, "Well, no, this is how it went," you get into that with them talking about now raptors had feathers. Okay, well, maybe they did, but nobody knows that for 100% because nobody saw a live one that's alive right now.
Once they get to a certain point, it's just all guesswork.
Yeah,
it's all a hypothesis. It's just an unproven guess. Granted, some of them make sense, some of them don't, and that's the same thing in the cryptid world, folks. I mean, it's why we always say there are no experts in this field.
Yep.
And anybody that claims otherwise is straight up lying to you. What we have is guesswork. We based on eyewitness testimony, off evidence found, off track morphology. We have our best guess. Anybody that says they know exactly what these things are is probably full of crap.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emmy.
I saw what I saw, but it was dark out there. It wasn't like there was a light shining on its face where I could see every single detail. So over time, and this is how the human mind works. Over time, my mind has filled in the blank spaces that I couldn't see with things that I've seen on TV and things that come here and there. So what I see in my mind's eye may not have been 100% accurate as to what I saw out that door because it was dark. I could see certain aspects of it, but I could not see the entire face of what was looking at me, in 100% clarity. So your mind's going to fill in those blanks. That's how your mind works. It's like if you've ever seen those things that they change every other letter or every certain letter, but you can still read it.
Yeah.
Because that's how your mind works. Your mind can fill in those blanks. And it does the same thing with images. You see something out and you get a good reference of it in your mind's going to pick and choose what fits in those blank spots and fill it in. And, that's where a lot of they teach us this when you're interviewing witnesses on things like murders and things like that. When you're trying to get descriptions of the suspect, you have to ask certain types of questions to make sure you're getting exactly what the most accurate description you can get. Because if you just leave it, just say, okay, what he looked like and let it go, you don't know exactly what you're getting. That's all I got to say about that.
Sorry, I was answering some questions in the chat.
Oh, that's cool.
But the documentary is called Yeti Attack, and the book we were talking about is called Them and Us: How Neanderthal Predation Shaped Modern Man by Danny Vendramini. Again, it's one of those ones. It's not widely accepted by the known scientific community, but when you read the book, it makes a lot more sense than a lot of the public stories.
Well, but it
also explains the uncanny valley theory.
Yep. But it's like we say, most of the known scientific community doesn't accept most of what we say anyway because they don't believe.
That's why it's called cryptozoology.
Yeah.
The study of unproven animals.
But what as early as 99 was considered a fake cryptid, or not a fake cryptid, but a cryptid, the biliate.
The biliate. And it's legit.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but does that not look like something that could be considered maybe a small Sasquatch type creature?
It could, if somebody saw that walk by them on two legs in the jungle, I can see how that could be confused for a Sasquatch.
It's a 6-foot chimp that walks on two legs
and uses tools.
Yeah. And sneaks into villages and steals women and children. Kills lions.
3D Havoc says, have you all heard of the theory about Lemurians being Bigfoot? That would be interesting. I need to dig into that. That's kind of interesting. I had not heard that. Hey, Sentinel's in the house. What's up, man? How's it going? Good to see you, dude.
What's up, Sentinel?
I personally am, and I know I've kind of come full circle on it, because when I first heard the story, I thought Bigfoot, Yeti. But then I read the evidence on it and thought, well, the Russians are probably right. It probably was something explainable. But I've come full circle on this. I really believe the Dyatlov Pass incident had something to do with a Yeti attack, especially with that eyewitness coming forward. What about you, Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, we've said it before. Every major or every continent, every First Nation tribe, just about dang near every civilization has some type of story, picture, folklore, draw, whatever, about something that looks just like what we call Bigfoot.
Right.
So it's worldwide paranoia. Is that what we're supposed to believe? That's exactly what they want us to believe.
Hey, Sentinel, thanks for the super chat, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Sentinel. But you and I both worked in a field where we know that kind of that doesn't happen.
Right.
That much coincidence is just, it doesn't happen. It just is impossible. For every single continent, every single culture, main civilization and culture, every First Nation tribe.
On every continent but Antarctica. And we don't know about Antarctica because we're not allowed to explore it.
Yeah, and I wonder why. So, I mean, I guess, I'll have to do it for Steve, since Steve ain't here and wrap the tinfoil inside the cowboy hat. Because what else could it be other than a big conspiracy that they don't want some of this? It comes to a certain point where it's just, there is no other way to look at it other than it's a big cover up by all these governments. I mean, I hate to be that guy and I hate to say that, but when you boil everything down to the brass tacks, it gets to that point where it's just.
Robert D's got a good comment here. He says they have wild tribes in South America come out of the jungles and talk about these things. Also, they don't have any TV or radio. So how do these tribes even know what they're describing? Well, hey, got a super chat from David Bye. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Robert, to your point, to further that point, same thing with the Kelly and Bembe out of the Congo. They showed them these people have never seen a book before in their life, and they're describing this creature, and they show them a picture of a brontosaurus in a book, and they're like,
well, they showed them a picture of a hippo first, and they're like, no, we know that one. They showed them a brontosaurus, and they're like, yeah, that's what we've been seeing. I don't understand. I mean, that would be such a dense area of heavy foliage. If pocket populations of brachiosaurs could survive, that would be the place. Or the deep Amazon.
It's just like Johnny now on our show the other night about the Jersey Devil. I did not realize. Do you realize the Pine Barrens are 1 million acres in New Jersey?
I did not realize they were that big.
New Jersey, right next to New York and Philadelphia, and all these big cities. You got
1 million acres. Holy crap!
Never been touched, never been logged. Nothing. What can hide in 1 million acres?
A lot.
I mean, like I said, I hate to be that guy. I hate to be Steve and put my
Tinfoil hat.
tinfoil in my inside my cowboy hat, but dang, it gets to a point where that's the only logical conclusion you can draw.
Greg is absolutely correct. We've sent people to death row on eyewitness testimony, but
We've
when it
said
comes to
that before.
Bigfoot, eyewitness testimony is never accepted.
That you and I have said that very same thing of how many people have you put in jail, DA, based on a voluntary statement?
I've snapped the cuffs on a lot of folks because of the statement of a witness.
In 28 years, I've probably put well over 500 to 600 people, and that's just a conservative estimate, 500 to 600 people in jail, just over, voluntary statements that I've gotten from people, not stuff that I've went out and witnessed or, investigated stuff like just, hey, who did this? Oh, so-and-so. How do you know? Statement. Oh, send it to the judge. Judge, yep, that's it. Here's your warrant. Go get him.
David Neal says, curious, didn't someone say that there was some kind of strange lights in the sky? Wouldn't surprise me if the lights were flares fired to attract something to the climbers. Yeah, they mentioned that in the documentary that something set off lights in the sky, and they saw it several times. It was almost like the Russians were intending to trigger a violent response from these Yetis so they could study it. Stalin had tried many times to capture one. Stalin tried to use both chimpanzees and orangutans to breed a super soldier. And it was known that both Stalin and Hitler had groups of people out actively hunting Yeti.
Well, Hitler hunted everything cryptid, supernatural, natural, paranormal. Hitler hunted all that stuff.
Yeah.
Anything that he felt like he could get to gain an advantage in the war, he was out there. He didn't pull it. He was like, Hitler was never one of those that said, that's stupid. That don't exist. He was like, Bigfoot, you say? I bet I could use that. Hey.
In the photos from the Dyatlov the Dyatlov victims, I believe it was picture number 34 that was taken by the 38-year-old, the one that was forced on them. What was his name? Zolotaryov. Was on his camera. It was of lights on the mountainside. So I really do think that these poor kids were set up. And I think the Russians were either hoping to study what the Yeti could do or maybe move in and capture them. Really, really weird circumstances, but the conditions these bodies were in is not indicative of an avalanche. Not at all.
Well, and like we talked about, I mean, have there been people who were crushed in an avalanche? Sure.
But they usually find them like up against rocks or trees.
Exactly. By and large, they're killed by suffocation.
Right.
So for them to come in and see all these people that are crushed, like you said, like it looks like, Andre the Giant came up behind them and grabbed a hold of them and just squeezed them to death. Yep, avalanche.
Yeah. Well, and then, of course, Dyatlov himself, like I said, he had defensive wounds on his hands and on his arms and wrists, and his skull was crushed. He fought something.
He was fighting the hypothermia.
Yeah, that's it. He was trying to kick hypothermia's ass.
Yep. He went down.
I guess it might work. I mean, John Wayne kicked cancer's ass twice.
I mean,
got him the third time, but
I mean, So
there's just so much, especially when you couple that with the Mansi, people in the Mansi villages going missing in the days leading up to this, and the Mansi hearing the attack. To me, it's the smoking gun.
To logical people, yes, like us, it's a smoking gun. But the problem is, and those types, it's the ones you make fun of about the British Museum. Oh no, couldn't possibly.
That's right.
Those are the kind of people who tick me off more than just about any other person on the face of this earth. People who sit behind a desk and punch a keyboard, and nothing wrong with people who do that, because there are people but people like that who never get out in the woods, never get out in nature, never look for this stuff. They get all their knowledge by punching a keyboard and telling other people what to do and telling other people how stupid they are going to tell people like me and you who've been out and seen stuff, no, you're wrong.
Well, it was like when my cousin and I saw Black Panther. The Missouri Department of Conservation told us to our face it wasn't a Black Panther, it was just a regular mountain lion. We're like, no, we saw it. It was completely black. Like, oh, no, those don't exist. Bull crap, it killed the coon dog.
It flabbergasts me the audacity and the a lot of these people have that sit there and say that. And like I said, 3D, not everybody that punches a kid. I'm talking about those scientists.
Yeah, who don't go in the field ever.
Yeah, because I have to punch on a keyboard too. I have to write reports all the time, so there's nothing wrong with punching on the keyboard. But those type that think they're researchers, but the only research they're doing is reaching over here to grab something else so they don't have to get up out from their desk while they're telling people like us how stupid we are for thinking something like this exists.
Well, I wish this was the only incident of a large group of people dying mysteriously in the snow, but it's not. Another one happened here in the United States in Yuba County, California in 1978. A group of friends went to a basketball game and they were coming back. On the way home, they ran into bad weather. And they were never when they went overdue, they started looking for these guys. Apparently I think there were 6 of them. 4: Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, Ted Weiler, and Jack Madruga. A 5th guy named Gary Mathias has never been found. There's 5 guys, so the fifth one was never found. But after the disappearances, people started sending out search parties. But they didn't really find anything until in June when the snow started to melt. They'd found the car abandoned, which is weird. It's in the Plumas National Forest, a very remote area. After the snow melted in June of 1978, 4 of the bodies were discovered. Ted Weiler was found in a U.S. Forest Service trailer some 12 miles north of the car. Only bones were left of Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, and Jackie Hewitt as a result of scavenging animals. But Weiler had apparently lived for as long as 3 months after the men were last seen, starving to death starving to death despite an ample supply of food and heating materials found nearby.
Really? Well, that sounds familiar, don't it?
Yeah. Food and rescue material nearby, and the guy starved to death.
Kind of sounds like maybe a hunter that set his gun down to go checking for something he shot and died of hypothermia in
here in Missouri in a night that probably wasn't cold enough to kill you.
Weather. Yeah,
that's to me that's just a weird story. It's they're called the Yuba City 5, and they don't know what caused it. I mean, indicate if you've got stuck in the snow on the road, logic would tell you stay with the car or follow the road. But these guys were found way out in the woods, miles away. What ran them off the road? What caused them to go off the road in the first place?
What caused them to get out of the car
and run? Yeah,
leave the relative safety of the car. Because, okay, unless you're in a horror movie and you're just plain stupid, if you are in this situation, for speculations, chits and giggles, whatever you want to say, you're in this situation and this creature has caused you to run off the road, what normal, sane human being is going to get out of a car and take off running? Because whatever it is has got to work somehow to get into the vehicle. It ain't got to work a whole lot to catch you on the outside.
Yeah.
So whatever it was had to be terrifying enough for them to say, "Oh crap, I ain't staying in this car. I don't want to be the sardine in the can."
Right. And
So
this is known as the American Dyatlov Pass. Because they don't know what caused these guys to leave their vehicle to go traipsing off into the woods, and one of the bodies has never ever been found. Three of the bodies were found completely skeletal. The other one was found starved to death, but he was close to supplies. Why would you starve to death hiding when supplies were nearby?
something scared him so bad he didn't want to come out of hiding.
Mm-hmm.
And to sit there and starve to death and thirst to death, that had to be a powerful fear.
Northern California. I don't know what the rest of that is. Northern California Cubs fan says, I live in Yuba County, California. It's a very bizarre case. They were developmentally disabled. That's sad, but you would think they would still know to stay with the car. If they were able to go to a basketball game, or I think it was a basketball game, if they were able to go to a sporting event on their own, they were functional enough to know how to take care of themselves. Glenn Danson says, what caused them to be on the road in the first place? It was nowhere near the way home. And they all hated the outdoors, cold and dark. So yeah, why were they even on that road? That's bizarre. That is very bizarre.
Well, the thing is, we know that there are, whether the powers that be want to admit it or not, every one of us, most everyone in the chat, you, me, Noah, Steve, Doc, all of us know that there's more out here in this big old world than the powers that be want to admit or want us to know. And at times though, that those things just get let out of the bag, so to speak, or they get out of the bag, or whatever term you want to deem it as, and then they have to run around scrambling to try to make some kind of nonsense story up to cover up all this stuff. And I'm not a Will Smith fan, obviously. I did like the very first Men in Black, but that pegged it the way these government agents, when the first time he's trying to sit there and make up the story after people have been neuralized, some swamp gas refracted off Venus, and but that's what it's like. They sit there and just try to make up the most nonsensical story the truth makes more sense than half the time than the stories that they put out there.
Right.
But,
swamp gas for sure. And then somebody mentioned the Corvina group. That's the third one. This one again in Russia, in a mountain range 3,000 miles away from Kolyatsikal. This mountain was called Kamar Daban, and it was much closer to Mongolia. It was in the mountain range north of Mongolia. About 3,000 kilometers from Kolyatsikal. 6 experienced hikers, 3 men and 3 women, hired a local guide who was considered an expert guide, a woman by the name of Ludmila Korovina. And she had hiked those mountains many times. She leads a group of 6 experienced hikers up through what would be considered a pretty difficult hike. But again, these were experienced hikers. A couple of days into the hike, one of the guys on the hike starts acting odd. So they turn to check on him. He starts bleeding from the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and the ears, and then collapses. Dies shortly thereafter. People start freaking out. Ludmilla tells the others to go back and get help. She's going to stay with the body. Before they can leave, the same symptoms hit her. She starts bleeding from the eyes, the nose, the ears, the mouth, and she collapses. Panic sets in. The rest of the group starts running. One by one, all of them but one develop the exact same symptoms and collapse and die. The survivor was named Valentina Utochenko. And the documentary I watched actually interviewed her. She still doesn't know what happened to them. They just one by one, they died, started massively hemorrhaging. And she basically ran down the mountainside and ran into a group of other excursions. I believe they were in a canoe. But she just happened to run upon some other people, and they went and got help, and then they sent detectives and the military up to find the bodies.
That sounds like pulmonary edema that you get from high altitude climbing, but you said it wasn't really high altitude at that point, though,
No,
right?
they weren't that high up yet, and it was an area that Ludmilla had gone through many times without these problems.
But that's exactly what that sounds like, though. That's because in the class that I went through with Doc, he was describing that, and that's almost identical to what he said can happen to you if you get that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's weird that it happened way down.
The people that were investigating it believe it was caused by an infrasound attack. Because prior to starting showing symptoms, many of them began acting crazy.
Well, that's like a oxygen narcosis that you get
Mm-hmm.
from scuba diving, which is different from the bends. When I was starting to go through my class, I never got to finish it, but that was one of the things we talked about. He said it affects different people at different depths. He said you could have two people, and they call it narking out.
Nitrogen narcosis, yeah.
Yeah. Said two people could be at the exact same depth, and it hit one, not hit the other. He said you can narc out and be trying to feed your regulator to a fish. Your swim buddy's looking at you like, "What the heck are you doing?" So I would assume that something like that would affect different people differently because of our body compositions. And it's just like drugs and alcohol affect different people different ways.
But out of 7 people, 6 of them the hikers and one guide, it killed 6 of 7. And the symptoms came on fast. It killed 6 or 7 people that were used to this type of environment. They were all experienced hikers, just like the Dyatlov group. And on the Yeti Attacks documentary, they were talking about Native sightings, natives of the area. And they believe they have located what they call a Yeti highway that runs from the Himalayas all the way up to through the Urals to northern Russia. That there's a place through those mountain passes where these things can walk freely without ever running into people. And they believe that's how these things are basically crossing Asia. It's kind of terrifying. And if they've got that kind of Yeti highway in those remote mountains of Asia, why wouldn't they have them here? Like, I don't know, the Rocky Mountain Trail that goes from basically New Mexico to Canada, that you can hike the Rockies, or the Appalachian Trail.
Weren't the Appalachians a part of the Urals at one time?
No, not the Urals. The same mountain range that runs through Scotland and Ireland.
Okay, I knew it, but still, I mean it's the same mountain range basically, other than being separated by the oceans. They lined up at one time. So I mean, if it's home there, basically, just like the 1970s version of King Kong, he's going to go somewhere where it looks familiar to him.
That's right. Arkansas Hog Hunter says, I hear you there, DA. It's like down here, Fish and Game claims no wolves are in Arkansas, yet they're seen regularly. I know of 12 on my property. I've hunted and trapped all my life. No coyotes too big. I know a guy just here in Missouri. He's an author, a friend of mine. He's got another channel. For the life of me, I can't think of the name of his channel. It's Eric Testerman. You guys can find him that way through Facebook. But Eric has a very remote house up near the Niagara River here in Missouri, and he's captured red wolves on his trail cams. He sent me pictures of them, so I know for a fact they're red wolves here in Southwest Missouri. I've seen the pictures.
Well, we've seen some big old canine prints. You and Noah.
You and Noah found some massive canine prints down at Joe Bald. And Noah and I were just talking about that today, how that there was no trace of that marina left. And weirdly enough, when we come back with casting material, somebody had drove through the tracks we were there to cast, even though it was nowhere near the parking lot.
And it was a 10-foot long stretch of tracks, just long enough to go through that one little mud pit, and didn't even go all the way through. Just went through that.
And they drove over the tracks and then backed over them and
backed
left.
out.
Yeah, you can see where the tracks where they came in through the rocks. You can see where they came from the parking lot, drove over the tracks, backed out, and left. That's all they did.
Yeah, that's what Johnny said. He's 24-hour service. We remove all your tracks for you.
Damn right. And the marina thing still freaks me out. When Noah and I were down there filming, we were doing a couple promo videos down there. It was middle of the day. We saw a whole crew out there building that marina, and you could tell that's what they were building. It was close to done. And I looked at Noah, I'm like, are they going to reopen Joe Bald? He goes, that's what it looks like. That's a marina. You can see where they're going to tie the boats up. And then when you and I, Noah, went down there, every scrap was gone. And that was just in a matter of like 3 weeks.
And, in our Joe Bald episode that we did on What's Really Out There, I was talking to Johnny about the pipe that you and I found that was twist fractured. That Johnny was really interested in that. He was like, he said, PVC pipe just don't snap like that. He said, it has to be really cold and somebody would have to really be strong.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it, brother. It's called the bizarre and the unknown. Sorry, I couldn't remember it off the top of my head, man. Sorry about that, man. Go ahead. You were saying couldn't snap it?
Yeah, well, he said it's possible, but you would have to be really, really strong to turn, because it's hard to explain to y'all. But if you saw it, you'd understand. It wasn't snapped this way because the brakes were not straight across; they were beveled.
They were jagged.
So it was broke by twisting in opposite directions. Because we found both pieces.
I took David Bye down to Joe Bald, and he said they had some of the parts of the marina when he was there. Anyway, sorry, man. Go ahead.
No, I just say the brakes were beveled, so they didn't fit straight together. They had to roll back together, which meant they broke like this against or I guess that would be with the grain. But
it's not a normal way for PVC to break.
No.
The tracks we found down there were, well, how big do you think the actual the what we thought were Bigfoot tracks?
Well, the wolf track was bigger than this.
Yeah, and that would be a massive wolf. Wolf tracks were probably 7 inches across.
Okay, I measured this the other day because I was curious because this megalodon tooth, they say 10 feet for every inch. This is 4.5 feet. Or 4.5 inches, excuse me.
So 45 feet.
Yeah, 45 foot. This come out of a 45-foot shark. So
Jesus.
That's scary in itself. But this is known, is my point. So now it's about the same, 4.5 inches. The track was bigger than that. So you're looking at at least a 5-inch track.
I would say probably 6 to 7 because it was significantly bigger than the knife.
And when I was in Texas, I asked Ken Gerhardt, I said, what is the biggest track you've ever seen in the wild? And he said 4 to 4.5 inches. So,
and that's a big wolf.
That's the biggest. That size right there is the biggest track he saw that he's seen. And the one we found was bigger than that.
The one we found looked like a dinner plate. And that was clearly a canine track.
Yep, because there were claws in it. Yeah.
No,
you're
because
right,
I'd say
Noah.
6 to 6.5 for sure.
Because when we laid the knife down for Noah to take the pictures, the knife is kind of centered in the middle of the track like this, and there's
track on both
track
sides,
on both sides of the knife.
at least an inch on both sides of the knife.
So, yeah, that's big.
Well, and also from the tracks, there weren't 4 sets of tracks. There weren't front tracks and rear tracks. There were just rear tracks.
So, because I think, yeah, I think the one that I found when I was, and me and Greg were talking about that, which we talked about it when Greg was on the show, but it was like one of those moments where we both just like had that we know what each other's talking about moment, because I was trying to think of a way to explain that area that you and Noah and I found. He said, "Did it look like a bird nest? It was turned on its side." And I'm like,
That is exactly what it looked like. And the funny part is when you got down on your hands and knees inside that, and Noah and I walked up the trail, I was less than 10 feet away and couldn't see you, and I knew where you were.
And what I was wearing and what to look for.
Mm-hmm. And if I had been walking down that trail and didn't know you were there, I'd have been on top of you before I saw you.
I just want to interject real quick. It also is very coincidental that just up the way from that like hovel or whatever you really want to consider that, me and Robbie found like gash marks in a tree, like in the like body of a tree, as well as kind of a partial print next to another like big, like probably either a big ass branch or even a small tree like we were next to. There was a print right next to it. So it's just it's incredible that there was this big ass print in this little hut not far from another print that Robbie and I had just ran into. Sorry, I had that thought in my head and I was like, I can't let this escape.
No problem. The weird thing about Joe Ball is the more we poke around, the weirder that place gets. Like those electrical boxes that are in the middle of the woods. I remember when that campground was open, there was no electricity to any of those campsites. There was no lights, pole lights down there. None of that.
When we were riding through there and you saw it, you said, "What is that?" And I said, "That looks like one of those electrical boxes." And your exact words were, "But this has always been primitive. There was nothing electrical other than that." The guard shack.
Primitive campsites. The only electricity in the entire campground was at the guard shack at the entrance. There was no electricity on any of those campsites.
And sure enough, Noah and I walked up there, and as soon as we started getting close, I looked at Noah and I said, "That's exactly what that is. That's one of those little green transformer boxes." And then we get up there, and it was one that was wired in, because lo and behold, you get the box that's laying on its side over there. And then I pointed out, I said, "Look right there." We look down, and there's buried wires coming up out of the ground.
And we found another one about 100 yards away from it. And there's no explanation for that. There were no like pole lights in the park. It was all primitive campgrounds. In fact, those campgrounds are still there. You can find the hooks where you're supposed to hang your lantern. All of that's still there. If there had been electrical hookups in there, there would still be outlets and crap up
If I'm not mistaken, Noah, correct me if I'm wrong, there was one of those in right there around where we were looking at that box.
Yeah.
There was one of what?
Obviously had been wired into the ground.
There was one of what? I didn't hear what you said.
The little poles that got the hooks on to hook your lantern on.
Oh yeah. There was one of those up there for sure.
But those campsites are all primitive. I mean, they had hooks where you could hang either a gas or battery powered lantern. Places where you could back your vehicle in. They had concrete picnic. A lot of those picnic benches, the picnic tables, are still there, but some of them look like they've been physically broken. It takes a lot to break concrete, reinforced concrete, and there's no marks on any of the broken parts where it looks like somebody hit it with a hammer. And of course, we had pictures in the video that we took that night. You and I were shooting live there. We showed the Facebook Live. We found a concrete footpath where it goes over across a ditch that the entire steel support has been bent, and there is no way that got hit by a car because they would have been stuck in that ditch.
And I leaned up against that pole. I'm 260 pounds, I ain't light, and I'm not weak by no stretch of the imagination. I leaned up against that thing, tried to move it, and I couldn't move it. It had been like bent like that, and I couldn't, even after it had been bent, I still couldn't move it.
The next bridge down is intact. I mean, they're where they should be. But if you look at that one, I'm going to go back down there and get some better daylight pictures with the DSLR, so they're good quality pictures. But that thing has obviously been bent with a lot of force.
Noah's got a good
not even bent in the same direction, like it was bent in opposite directions. It's really bizarre.
That's exactly right. Noah and I forgot about that part. We both tried to move it at once and still couldn't move it. But didn't you say that was the either was the one or right close to where that picture for your book?
Yeah, that was the other one is exactly where we took the picture for the book. And they shot that little video where we had something peeking out from behind the tree. The other footbridge is that exact bridge.
I knew it was close to that, either that one or the one right next to it.
Mm-hmm.
But the point of all this is, I think anyway, at least my point of all this is there's so much weird stuff, even right in your own backyard, that the stuff in Russia, that's amazing. That's fascinating.
Terrifying.
Terrible. Yeah. But we ain't got to look far to find weird stuff. Then we left Joe Ball and went down to Blunk Road. And when we were having our episode on what's really out there, and I was telling Johnny and recounting the thing with the deer. Now, Johnny's even more of a hunter than I am. And it just perplexed Johnny. He was just like, what? You mean, but no explanation for it. I talked to my dad. My dad's been a hunter his entire life. Dad's 70-something years old. Been in the woods his entire life hunting. Knows how to skin his own, cape them out, dress them out, everything. And I'm telling Dad about it, and he's like, I have never in my life ever, and you're talking about somebody who was 40-plus years law enforcement, never, ever seen or heard of anything like that happening.
Well, that head laying in the middle of the road when we first got down there, as we're pulling down the road, and I got my bright lights on, I was looking, what the hell is in the road? Oh, by the way, I've got better phone service now. We would definitely have, signal down there. So I've got to go back down there. But when we saw that head in the middle of the road, I didn't know what to think. I mean, and when we went back up there and looked at it, it had not been cut. It was not cleanly severed.
Nope. Not even close to being clean cut. If that was done by a knife, that's a knife that ain't been sharpened in 12 years.
Yeah, they had to hack it off.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a scallywag tactical.
Yeah, weren't no gunners made, I can tell you that, or a bounty.
No.
Bounty would have been a real smooth shave.
But yeah, that's the thing. You don't have to go to Russia or China or Australia or any of these other places to find weird stuff like that.
Some of these are very close to home.
Yeah.
And then, we're talking about group encounters. We've got the Ape Canyon thing.
Yeah.
And that didn't end as tragically as the Dyatlov case, but it was a large group of people who were attacked in a cabin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Noah says there was the one that had the brain missing. Yeah, the top of the skull had been basically ripped off and the brains were gone. Now, I understand using every part of the deer, but the only reason you would take the brains is for brain tanning. And the hide was ripped up and laying 10 feet away from the head. So it wasn't, they didn't take it to tan the hide. The brains were just gone. And there's no reason to eat those brains. That with chronic wasting disease, I definitely would not eat deer brains.
When the Jersey Devil episode hits, I want you make sure you watch it or you listen to it.
Okay.
Because you said CWD, I want you to hear a theory that I proposed on that. I'm not going to spoil it on here, but I'll tell you after we get off, but
Okay.
I want you to hear that theory because we were talking and it just come to me. I'm like, so
Lene says, sounds like the Lakeview man with the skull. It does. It sounds like, yeah. Very much sounds like something out of the
Lakeview man, the Beast of Blunt Road is exactly what it sounded like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish those people had not been down there. Because if those people had not been down there, where we could have actually
done more digging,
spread out a little bit and done a little bit more digging. Because right there where we found that head in the first, on the road as we came in. But then right there where we really found the 2 or 3 more, however many it was, I really wanted to get over that little gate and go on up the road a little ways.
E.D. Testerman says, did you guys collect samples? I didn't have any Ziploc bags, and most of that stuff was pretty rancid. And without it sealed in a bag, I wouldn't put it in my car.
Yeah,
it had been there long enough that it was starting to fester pretty bad. So, no, we didn't collect any samples.
We'd have probably got some samples that collected us if we had of.
We might have.
Dysentery and bubonic plague, maybe CWD, and a couple other things.
Well, that area is a creepy area. I told you when we were pulling down there, this area was creepy, and before we even got there, you were like, "Hey, this is a pretty wild looking area."
But you know what though? I didn't get it was a creepy area. Don't get me wrong, but I did not get the overwhelming feeling
like you did at Joe Ball
Road, like I did at Joe Ball.
Joe Ball is just unsettling. Even in the daytime, it's unsettling.
Well, and just to clarify to you listeners out there, watchers, whatever you want to call yourselves, we were going up the road and DA stopped, or he kind of looked at me. He said, "All right, I'm going to do the same thing to you I did to Doc." He said, "I want you to tell me when you feel like we're getting close." I said,
no, I'm not sure about the howler lore of it eating brains. Nothing I've heard of, but generally when the howler kills something, they don't find much left of it. Open Coloring Book says, with OnStar on so many vehicles, has there been any recordings of attacks on OnStar? Not that I know of, but I will look into that and see if I can find. Northwood says collecting samples would have been less risky than contact with my ex.
Nope. He's on the board again. But anyway, he said, I want you to tell me when you feel like we're getting close. He said that I did the same thing to Doc. He said, I want to see. And
I'm building an evidence kit.
We were within what, maybe 0.3 of a mile of each other from where he said he felt it to where I said I felt it. And you can just chalk that up to some people more. I'm like DA. I'm a psychic brick. Stuff like that, just I don't think about it, don't affect it. But
even Doc, I get the heebie-jeebies in Joe Ball.
Yeah, but Doc is a lot more sensitive to that stuff than I am. He's had a lot more paranormal type encounters and things like that. So his was a lot further out when he felt it than I was. But that's, like I said, I'm like DA. I'm a psychic brick. But I did get that feeling, and he said it took you a little bit longer than it did, Doc. But he said, but y'all were pretty close. And it's just, you just get out there and, it's almost like being in a vacuum. It's kind of the best way I can think to describe it, because you get out of the car and it's just like.
And wow. How eerily quiet it is down there. Arkansas Hog Hunter says, I found similar situation back in the National Forest. I found deer skeletons hung up by the antlers 50 to 60 feet up in trees. Holy crap.
But like you can hear animals and stuff, but it's like across the lake and around the cove, like way away from where you're at. So it's just,
but not around you.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's like being in a vacuum or like being transported to a different world, because you're like, why can I hear that over there? And it should be going on right here. But it's not.
It gives me the heebie-jeebies as much as LBL does.
Well, really there was also that time that me and Dad went there to film a short for the channel, and we couldn't really get any real footage because the crows were just going insane.
Yeah, We had
Like-
I've got a video of that on my phone. The crows were going nuts.
It was crazy. Like they were just going absolutely ballistic, and it's like the only time I've ever heard crows do that is when something's like trying to get into their nests, or like something is really starting to bother them or come after them.
Well, they'll alert the predators too.
Right? Yeah.
Well,
Well, Noah disappeared. It's like, yeah, poof, gone.
he's like, I said what I gotta say, and I'm done.
And I'm out of here.
Hey man, I'm just trying to be behind the scenes. Leave me alone.
But yeah,
David By says, I felt it pretty early and it hung on till almost the highway. Joe Bald is just, there's just something different about that place.
and
And it's not anywhere near as big as LBL. Joe Bald is only maybe 100 acres.
yeah. Well, it's like when Jessica and I went to that place and we had that account where everything just shut off, like somebody turned the light switch off. Remember, I told you that I got that feeling that something was watching us. We both got that feeling, but I didn't lose that feeling until we got back down off the mountain and was back on the road. And that's about the time I called you and said, "Oh my God, dude, guess what?" But I didn't lose that feeling until, so it was a good, half mile to a mile back down the mountain. And, it's just that feeling of just, there's something watching you.
There's a question for you from Robert D. He says, Robbie, have you anything like Joe Bald around your state? Scape or swamp?
The feeling are you asking if I had anything that had the feeling like that? If that's the question, no. I've been places around here by myself, and the closest thing that I can equate to Joe Ball is like what I was just saying with me and Jessica that time up in Georgia.
David By says, DA, did you feel like you were being watched at Lexington? I sure did. Yes, I did. If you remember when they were filming me when I was up there talking at the campfire, I kept looking around through the trees, and I had my 3500 lumen light, and I would check the trees periodically. Noah and Connor checked the trees. There was definitely something in the woods around us.
Well, speaking of that light,
we never saw it.
Speaking of that light that was charged before we went down there, that died by the time we got there.
Mm-hmm. Your phone too.
I was about to say, along with my phone.
Your phone was like at 92% when we hit the highway. We pulled into Joe Bald. It was like 22.
Yeah, something like that.
David By says, yeah, and Annette had stuff thrown at her. And then what we saw across the road in front of us, just a couple of miles down the road from that ranch.
I just, and I know we kind of.
Yeah, well, we have kind of gotten away from, but it's still on the subject. We're not talking so much about Dyatlov Pass, but it's still related. We're talking about, how these kind of incidents aren't necessarily restricted to rough areas of the Ural Mountains. These things can happen right here.
Yeah, and it's just like, people think, they think California, they think Oregon, Washington, Dyatlov. They think places like that when you start talking about cryptids and things like that. But the point is, like you just said, it can happen anywhere. Right. I mean, my encounter was right 150 yards that way.
Yeah. Robert D. Joe Bald's about 100 acres of woods. That's about it.
It's 100 acres of wood.
But the other campground that we saw the sign for when we were down there, Ants Creek, there have been sightings down at Ants Creek, which is just, if you follow the lake, it's just a mile or so from Joe Bald.
And you say that's where the body from
when Clark found the body floating in the lake,
that's where that was.
That was Ants Creek. It's really not very far from Joe Bald by the lake.
That whole trip was great, but I didn't get to see what I really wanted to see. Amanda drive by on a
jet ski
pontoon laying out in her string bikini.
Yeah, that might have got us both in trouble.
Wouldn't got me in trouble.
Well, true. You're single. I might have gotten a little bit in trouble there.
I'm like, see you boys, I'm going for a swim.
Roxanne Delgado says, when I went to Wablo, Missouri, there's part of 54 Highway. 54 Highway, I always get a weird feeling every time I drive through there. I haven't been to Wablo in a long time, but there's part of old 54 that runs out past Bennett Springs. And there's an area between Bennett Springs and the turnoff that goes to Windyville that so there's just an area in there that's just creepy. Day or night, that section of road is creepy. And when you turn off to go down toward Ho-Hum campgrounds on that gravel road, it's like driving through a tunnel because the trees are grown up over, and even in broad daylight, that road is dark or at least in heavy shadow. Lenora Wilson says, do you think a Gugway is a hybrid of a dogman and a Sasquatch mix? I don't think so. After we had MK on the show the other day, I think the Gugway may not even be a Bigfoot at all. I think the Gugway may be a prehistoric sloth. They were known to be predators. They were three-toed. They had claws. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what the Gugway is. But after we had MK on the show talking about bipedal sloths, it really kind of changed the way I looked at Gugway. I still haven't ruled out the possibility of them being a type of like mandrill, like a bipedal mandrill, like a megafauna version. But when we had MK on, he was talking about those sloths, like the Honey Island swamp monster might have been just a giant sloth. It really, especially since most of the Gugway stories talk about them having three toes. It makes a lot of sense. Kevin Bode says, I wonder if any of the residents around the area have seen anything. We've tried talking to some of the people in the areas, and we get one of two reactions. Either they just won't talk to us at all, or they refuse to answer the question. That's happened. Josh Jones and I went down there, and Josh was talking to a guy that came down there on a golf cart, and the guy asked what we were doing. We were filming. And Josh told him, he said, we're down here, filming some footage for, we're talking about cryptids. You know anything about that? He goes, I don't know anything about cryptocurrency. Josh said, no, we're not talking about cryptocurrency. We're talking like Bigfoot, dogman, that kind of cryptid. And he goes, like I said, I don't know anything about cryptocurrency. And he drove off. Weird.
Yeah.
Philip Coyle says a stranger thing is some places in the U.S. the local people act like it doesn't exist. Yeah, those in the next town over will talk. I ran into that in LBL. The people in Grand Rivers did not. I got one of two reactions. Either they got pissed off at me. I got one guy threw me out of his bait store. They either got pissed off. Well, he didn't like physically grab me and throw me out. He wasn't rude. He just was very dismissive. He's like, I don't want to talk about it. You need to go. And he wouldn't talk to me anymore. So I guess when I say he threw me out, I can't really say he like, you get the hell out of my store. That wasn't anything like that. It was just more of a no, I don't know anything about that. I don't want to talk about it. I'm done talking to you. You can go now. That kind of thing. So he wasn't rude. He just stopped talking to me entirely. But then I spoke to a deputy sheriff, and he told me one cop to another, if I knew what was good for me, I'd drop it. And that's all he would say about it. So people in Grand Rivers did not want to talk about it at all, or pretended they knew nothing about it at all, despite those stories being infamous. But 15 or so miles away in, God dang it, I know the name of the town, can't think of it. Paducah, Kentucky. Everybody I talked to had a story. Philip Croyle's right. Yeah, he more cut me off and suggested I leave. Yeah, when I say he threw me out of the store, it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's essentially what happened. He didn't want to talk about it. He asked me to leave. He wasn't a jerk about it. He wasn't like raving at the mouth. He just at that point he was done talking to me and asked me to leave. Casey Calloway says, DA, it's like fishing. You weren't holding your mouth right. That may very well be the case. Yeah, but once we got over to Paducah, man, I had lots of people were volunteering stories. I asked one guy, and like 3 people overheard us and were telling me stories. So Paducah, everybody in Paducah had a story, that everybody I talked to anyway.
I think it's one of those things where depending
Thank you, Mrs.
on
Moon.
it's kind of like what Bandit said in Smokey and the Bandit. It depends on what part of the country you're standing in as to how big of an idiot you are.
Very good point.
It depends on your perspective on what these things are. If it's something that has been bad for business, or it's
Definitely an area that depends on tourists for their revenue.
We did that episode on the Hodag, which is it was debunked. It was a hoax. They finally admitted it and all that kind of stuff. But that town has still survived.
They still embraced it.
The police cars have this thing on the side of them.
Well, Falk, Arkansas, they've got the Falk monster on the side of their cop cars.
So
cop car, I'm sorry, they've got one.
One. Depending on where you're at in the situation is how you're going to react to it.
Right.
Like I said, if it's something that's hurt your business, I used to have 500 people come in here and buy tackle from this bait, but ever since this thing started coming around, I ain't got nobody comes in, one or two people come in and that's all they want to do is talk about that. Yeah, I'm probably not going to want to talk about it. Yeah. But by the same token, if across the river, it's bringing people in like us, and my hotel is making money hand over fist for people coming in and then I'm gonna anything that I know about it, I'm gonna talk about it.
Yeah. Eric Testament said, question, do you think it might have been a Wendigo that could have been responsible for the pass incident? I don't think so. One, if a Wendigo had taken them, I don't think they would have ever found the bodies. And two, they would have been fed on a lot. But most of the bodies weren't missing that much tissue, other than from decay and freeze dry. But for the most part, they weren't missing a lot of tissue. So if it'd been a Wendigo or a Wendigo-like creature, I really believe that they would have, every one of the bodies would have disappeared. They would have taken them back to a cave somewhere, because the Wendigo is the spirit of starvation. It would have eaten.
Yeah.
David advises the cop and Falk carry a bullet in his pocket. I don't know. I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but I did get a look at the car. And the car's neat. It's got the Legend of Boggy Creek swamp monster right there on the side.
Somebody said that they've closed the Monster Mart down now.
No, it changed hands. My cousin Dennis sold it, and the guy that bought it is expanding it.
Okay, good. Somebody said they closed it, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Well, I'm glad I got to go when I did."
Yeah, the old boy that bought it is expanding it.
Yeah, I actually asked him. Well, I told him, I said, "You remember a guy coming here a year or so ago, and his last name was Roberts. He was an author and writes books." And he's like, "Yeah, I think I vaguely remember that." Okay, just checking. I said, I wanted to say, well, you said y'all were cousins, so.
Canton Ripfist says, could the Dyatlov incident have been a territorial thing? I think that's exactly what it was. I think they went into these things' territory and were killed out of retaliation.
Well, and going along on that same vein that we were talking about earlier about the antagonizational part, that could have very well been what these government officials, the lights, flares, whatever it happened to be, that could have been what they were trying to see is, hey, how territorial is this thing? What will it do if it's provoked? Will it run? Will it fight? Whatever. Because if they're trying to, like we said with Stalin and Hitler, they're trying to study this thing for.
They were trying to create a super soldier.
Yeah. I mean, that's a data point that you'd want to know.
Well, supposedly in those mountains near Mongolia, a Russian general, they captured a Yeti alive. And while they were trying to transport it back to Moscow on a train, it attacked one of the guards and they shot and killed it. But they supposedly captured a living one at one point. Mrs. Moon says Thinker Thunker just did a review of Dyatlov Pass. Really good. I'll have to check that out. I like his videos.
But I think that kind of
thank you for coming here from What Lurks Beneath. That's a great channel. I love Josh. Awesome dude.
I think that's that really lines things up with what we know is fact that they were trying to do. I mean, that's a known fact that this was a project that Germany and Russia was fully involved. We know that our country was probably involved with something like that too, but we know for a fact that those two countries were fully involved with that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, they were in it for different reasons.
Yeah.
Stalin wanted to use them to make super soldiers, and Hitler thought that they would give credence to his Aryan supremacy theory because he believed that the Aryans came from the sky and that they brought these Yeti with them as a servant race, and that by proving those exist, it would prove their Aryan ties. But I don't know. It's a really weird whole chain of events on how that. But he literally had whole teams out looking for these things.
Hitler was a weird dude. I mean,
Casey Calloway says, didn't they find military gear at the tent site? I don't remember them saying they found any military gear. I would have to go back and review that, but I don't remember them saying anything about military gear.
I remember something about military equipment. And I mean, I've watched, 30 different documentaries on that, but it seems like I remember something about military equipment at the site.
Maybe it's not ringing any bells, but I could just be forgetting the detail. Pontoon Patriot says, DA, will you be sending your chats to podcasts soon? Yeah, Noah and I were just talking about that earlier. We're working on getting those, what we're going to have to do is download the videos from YouTube and strip the video component and upload the audio component only to Spotify and on Spreaker. And Spreaker will automatically put it on Spotify and Apple the Apple Network and a couple others. So that's in the works, but we just haven't gotten it done yet. And we're not sure how far back to go with the episodes. Well, I know, I think I just want to stick to the episodes with the modern cast, which means it only goes back a few months. So we'll at a certain point, we're just not going to go back any further because we'll just consider those archived episodes. And if anybody wants to watch them, they'll have to go to YouTube.
Well, we could go back to 2 Octobers ago. That's the modern cast because that's, other than.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to avoid.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I picked up what you put down. We're tracking now.
Yeah. I'm just wanting to exclude a certain, component.
Excuse me while I pull my foot out of my mouth. Thanks, Noah. Laugh at me while. You know why you kick a man when he's down, right? Because you don't got to lift your leg as high. But anyway, if that was what the whole thing was about, provoking, seeing what this thing would do,
what it was capable of,
getting that data point, which, that's an important thing when you're doing this kind of stuff. Almost everything that happened lines up with that. Putting this guy in at the
last minute to observe
with 2 cameras, which was like having.
They were like $500 a piece.
Yeah,
equivalent of U.S. money, like $500 a piece.
I mean, that's like an equivalent of today's terms. That's like me owning a Lamborghini.
Yeah, back in the 50s in communist Russia, that was an unbelievable display of wealth to have 2 cameras.
So, but everything tracks with some kind of government cover-up conspiracy. And as fast as the government got in there and did their initial investigation and said, oh, avalanche, hypothermia, there we go. That's it. But that girl's tongue was tore out. Yep, avalanche did it.
Torn out while she was still alive.
Yeah, avalanche did it.
Not bit off. Not bit off cleanly like it got caught between her teeth. It was torn out like at the root. And not found. They didn't find the tongue. And they knew they knew the tongue had been torn out while she was alive because of the quantity of her own blood in her stomach. That means she was definitely alive when it was torn out. Because dead people don't swallow.
Nope. When muscles contracted and closed her throat if she was dead. If she'd already been dead when it got ripped out.
Exactly. If she'd already been dead, there wouldn't have been hardly the quantity of blood anyway. Sorry, I was trying to catch up on some of the comments.
But like I said, all that tracks along with that, that thought pattern of if this is what's going on, if this is what they're doing, everything makes sense as to why or what happened and why it happened, and how, when, where, why, all that. All that timeline, it makes sense if that's what it was. A lot of stuff lines up, is what I'm saying.
Miss Naoma, I'm glad to hear you're feeling better. We've been pretty worried about you. Read Bizzle's comment. Don't put it up on the screen, Noah, but it's pretty funny. Roxanne says, I think it'd be cool if you could talk to the officer and the one man that saw the Bigfoot in Southwest City, Missouri. It's on the B to 8 show 8 also. Yeah, I would love to. If I figure out how to make contact with him, I would love to get him on the show. I did have contact with a guy who's got a couple of different Ozark Howler sightings, and I've got to get back a hold of him. I was supposed to talk to him this last weekend, but I was pretty sick, so I didn't talk to him then. So I'm going to give him a call one evening this week or this weekend and see about getting him on the show. And we will actually have an eyewitness that's had more than one Ozark Howler incident. And this is a guy that spends a lot of time in the woods. So yeah, when I heard his story, I was very intrigued by the story, because you can listen to some stories and go, I don't know about that. But this one, just when he told his story, I was like, yeah, this guy definitely saw something. You could tell by his body language that he was still freaked out about what he'd seen and heard.
So, I mean, like I said, I'm not going to say 100% yes. We've solved it. It was a government conspiracy.
But I think the Russian government deliberately covered it up.
Oh, yeah. And if they deliberately covered it up, they did it for a reason. And what would be a good reason? Oh, well, they set it up.
For study, for curiosity.
Yeah.
To see how these things would react territorially.
And why would you?
Hats. There you go.
But I mean, if the shoe fits.
Well, the other incident that happened in Russia was, again, 3,000 kilometers away. But to me, it sounds like an infrasound attack. I mean, these people were experienced hikers. They'd been up in the mountains numerous times. They weren't that high yet. They were nowhere near their destination. And even the guide, who was a known guide for the area, who constantly led trips up into these mountains, 6 of the 7 died of massive hemorrhaging from eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. And they've yet to release cause of death. However, in the original Dyatlov case, they used the phrase "unknown compelling force" in the description of what happened to the 9 hikers. They used the exact same phrase for the other one. Unknown compelling force.
What, pray tell, is an unknown compelling force?
To me, it says it's not human.
Sounds to me like that's one of those phrases or terms that they make where when people like you and me call them on their BS, they say, well, an avalanche isn't human. That's an unknown compelling force.
Right. Well, no, that's a known compelling force.
Yeah. Well, no. The refraction of the swamp gas from Mars and the way the telemetry of the geometric
Pontoon Patriot says unknown compelling force. My ex-wife again.
I think Pontoon Patriot and Northwoods are in competition to see who can
I
get
think so. Philip Croyle says unknown compelling force, better known as a Yeti fist, perhaps. Or not of this earth, from Mrs. Moon. Yeah, it means it could mean a lot of things, but an unknown compelling force means it's nothing we currently are aware of. So the Russians might have made a much bigger admission by using that phrase both times than they really wanted to admit.
Well, I'm not so much focusing on the unknown part as I am compelling force. What do they mean by compelling force?
Something forced them out of the tent. And in the case of the other group of hikers, something forced them to start acting bizarre and hemorrhaging massively. But they won't say what it is or even what caused it. Or in the case of the ones with the hemorrhaging, they wouldn't even release cause of death.
Like I said, something ain't stirring the Kool-Aid.
Bill Patty says the word compelling is a weird word to use for something like that. I totally agree.
Yeah, and that's
And
what
I
I'm
firmly
focusing
believe the
on.
Russians know what happened. They just won't say it.
You know, if you want to say it was an unknown force, you could even reason that away as to a avalanche. At that time, I mean, I know now we've probably got, devices and sensors that can measure that stuff. But back then, maybe, you don't know what kind of force an avalanche could exert. So you can say they were crushed by an unknown force exerted on their body.
But let's say for a second that it was an avalanche. If they were camping out in the open instead of among the trees, which would have broken the strong winds off of them, would have helped keep them warmer and out of the wind. They camped out in the open. First off, for an inexplicable reason. Experienced hikers would not have camped out in the open like that. But if it had been an avalanche and they heard it, that would explain why they cut their way out of the tent and ran. It would not explain why, one, the tent was not under snow when it was found, and two, why all the little peek holes were cut so they could look out. If they heard an avalanche coming, they wouldn't need to peek to see what it was. They'd have just cut and run.
Is that where we got the term cut and run from?
It might have been.
But follow that line of reasoning. If you leave the word compelling out, it makes a lot more sense from their standpoint of it, from a cover-up standpoint of. But when you throw that word compelling in there, an unknown compelling force, that's just weird. It's almost like you said, it's like they're that soft admission type thing, or soft disclosure.
Right. Casey Calloway says if you look at that area, it's not even steep enough to cause an avalanche. Yeah, it's only like a 12-degree angle.
And I'm sure there's ways to check how many avalanches have been recorded there. And I just wonder what the number is. I wonder if it's relatively low.
Probably. I mean, on that side of Kolyat-Sakal, I would say so. But the other side of the mountain is very steep. But that side is like a slow angle approaching the summit. Just here and there says, what a better way to observe the results of an unknown compelling force than to use said force in remote places to see what it's capable of doing to people. That would make sense why that guy was added to their group at the last minute.
Yeah, they just forgot to tell him he was part of the bait.
Right.
But that, that's just throwing that word in there is that's odd. Number one. I mean, because if you're really trying to cover it up, simplicity, KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
Right.
Don't go around calling yourself Joe Dierte when your name's Joe Dirt.
That's right.
Don't church it up none.
That's right. Casey Calloway says, DA, the slope there isn't conducive for avalanches. Yeah, I believe that's what I remember saying. I remember them saying in the documentary that area, if there had been an avalanche, it would have been what they call a slow roll. It just, snow would have just come down and probably stopped long before it got to them.
That'd been more like just like a shift.
Right. We are already coming up on the 2-hour mark. Holy crap.
Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun.
Sure does. And again, the fact that a living Mansi has been located that was not only alive at the time, but in the area, and said that they'd already had people from their village, adults and children, go missing in the woods around that area. And then while out on a hunting party, they heard the roars and screams from the parties they were attacked. The Mansi said it was the Yeti, it was the mink. Thank you, Nymeria. Hey, good to see you with us. Bizalaces, can we get a new book update? I was wanting to have multiple books out by now, but since my hospitalization in November, the not being able to breathe, a lot of the issues I've been having, it was very difficult for me to concentrate. So I would sit down and try to write, and I just couldn't do it. So I'm months behind where I wanted to be right now. But I've been working here the last week or so. Probably going to work some more tonight. But I'm hoping to have a book or two out in the next month, maybe even more, depending on how well things go. I've got 4 projects currently running, 3 of which are close to being done. So keep your fingers crossed. There should be 1 compilation of short stories and 3 novels. So hopefully I'll have all of those done in the next couple of months, and we'll have a lot more releases. Yeah, Nathan Finn says, yeah, breathing is kind of important. Yeah, you don't realize how much you take it for granted till you can't do it. Thank you, Bizzle. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm not out of the woods, but I'm, leagues better than I was even just a few days ago. I was back in the hospital a week ago last Wednesday. So it'll be actually 2 weeks ago tonight. I was back in the hospital and wound up in the ER, and they gave me a massive thing of LASIK to help get that fluid off my lungs. But they've got me on better meds now as of Monday when I went to see my cardiologist. And, I think I'm much more content with the progress that I'm making now. I think it's going to be good and beneficial overall. Miss Lene says, yay, so the alphas will have something to peruse soon. Yes, definitely. Hopefully I'll have a bunch for the alphas coming up real soon. I've got 2 short stories I need to finish for the short story compilation, but they're both close to done. Demons Part 2, and then another one that's set in the early 80s in New Mexico about a dogman. The collection of short stories is going to be pretty full. It'll probably be 70,000, 80,000 words when I'm done. It'll be the size of a full-length novel But it's all going to be short stories. And then I've got the next Dark Frontiers. I've got the next Nightmare Hunter project. And then the first of my fantasy series. I'm all fairly close to done on all of those. Justin Oldfart says 2 hours in, you ain't peed yet. Gone twice in that time. Well, I went right before we went live, like within 2 minutes of before we went live, and I've been sipping on my drink instead of drinking a lot of it. So I've been trying to gauge it as much as I could. Mary says Kevin isn't feeling well tonight, but we've both been enjoying listening to you. At least I'm off to work to be here. Well, I'm glad you're with us, and tell Kevin, I'm hoping he gets to feeling better. We're praying for him. I'm trying, Casey. I promise. And my wife and my boys stay after me to make sure I'm doing what I need to be doing. Hopefully they'll be seeing a lot more content coming from us because I'm feeling better than I have in a very long time. Apparently that breathing issue, while it was building up slow, I did not realize how much it had been affecting me, and it's probably been affecting me the last 2 years. But I'm breathing better now than I have in a long time. And hopefully that's going to transcribe to me being able to get back out in the woods more and do a lot more filming and be more proactive and active with the writing. So keep your fingers crossed for me. Throw my name in the hat when you say your prayers, and I would sure appreciate that. And we appreciate each and every one of you guys that have reached out, checked on me, and sent prayers my way, and all the kind words. And folks, it means the world to me. Thank you guys so much. Miss Naomi says, seriously, you thought at least a few of us wouldn't answer? I can't read. Thank you, Philip. He says, may your health continue to improve. There you go. Well, there's room for more custom emotes. I know we haven't used all of them. So we need to get a couple of those done. Nathan Finn says, okay, good night, y'all. Wonderful show, amazing topics. Dude, thank you for being here. I'm glad you were here with us tonight. I appreciate you, and have a great night, dude. Lenore Wilson says, glad you're feeling better. You look much better. You sound better too. I'm going to say good night to everybody. Good night. Thank you for being here, and thank you so much. Yeah, my color's better. I'm breathing better. Hell, the last show we did, I was getting out of breath just while we were talking. And I haven't had that problem tonight. I feel pretty good. Casey Calloway says, you do know Gray Eagle is still missing. Yes, I'm planning on taking care of that. There's probably not a day goes by I don't get a comment either on my website or in a message like, hey, when's Gray Eagle coming back? So I'm working on it. It is in the works. You will be seeing more out of William Gray Eagle coming very soon, along with Sarah and Jason. So they'll all be back soon. Miss Naomi, you have a good night. You be safe.
That was Naomi.
Well, since we are at the 2 hour mark, maybe we should talk about our affiliate programs and start wrapping things up. How about we have a word from little Doc himself, since Doc couldn't be here, and talk about our good folks over at Dark Angel Medical.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
And if, let me put that right in the middle of the screen. If y'all head over to Dark Angel Medical, don't forget to use discount code CRYPTID25 for 25% off your order. Dark Angel kits are the best in the business. That's what I counted on to protect my own life when I was on duty as an officer. And I take a Dark Angel kit with me just about everywhere I go. So definitely check out their kits, and you can get the training classes and sign up for those as well at Dark Angel Medical. Those are HSA and FSLA eligible. So folks, check those out, especially if you're a first responder, because the life you save very well could be your own. So definitely check out Dark Angel Medical. And you wouldn't want to, Robbie, you wouldn't want to tell us a little bit about Scallywag Tactical, would you?
I sure would. And I'm waiting for the show to come back because I got something in the mail from an anonymous person a couple weeks ago. And you know what it is, DA, but
I sure do.
somebody sent me the one Scallywag Tactical that
Now
I
he's
did
in the
not have.
club.
So, it seems like every one of these I get, the bar just gets raised higher and higher. It started out with my Dewclaw, and I was like, man, this is awesome. I don't think you can get any better than this. And I got some of my folders, my Jolly Roger, my Sailor Assisted folder, and the Orca and all that stuff. And I thought, man, these knives are great. Then I got my gunner's mate. I said, all right, that's it. It can't get any better than this. And then this thing showed up on my door. Now I got big hands, and I can comfortably get both of my big mitts on the grip of this thing. So, folks, if you want something that is purpose built to do the job that it was built for, you can't go wrong with any of the blades at Scallywag.
Scallywag has some brand new blades out that are just out in 2020-24.
That little mini cleaver, have you seen that?
Yes.
That thing is nice.
Another
looking.
New one. This one's called the Dugan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love a good push dagger. And they made a really nice one. It's that 420 stainless. This thing is just stupid sharp. And if you're needing a good everyday carry knife for self-protection or for cutting just about anything, I highly recommend the Dugan. It is a great knife.
Here's the thing about every single one of these blades that I've gotten. They put the same time, effort, and care into that little push dagger that DA just showed you as they do to something like this.
High quality blades.
Everything is high quality. I mean, there is just, for as big and heavy as this is, and DA, this thing is balanced so well. You can swing this thing around in the woods for hours and it not fatigue you because it's heavy, it's big, but it's weighted right for just what it's built to do. And that's taking things off, whether that be a tree limb or something else.
It's going to do it well either way.
Do its job. And so whoever out there sent that, thank you. You read my mind, got my Christmas gift list taken care of. But same, I mean, that's just as good a quality.
Oh yeah,
as that. I love that. This is one of my favorite knives of all time. This is my, we talk about everyday carry knives and things like that. This right here is one of the best utility knives that I've ever. If I need to get down and use this as a tile knife or a carpet knife, opening boxes from Amazon, stripping wire for electrical work, or just a knife to have this. There's nothing this knife is not, and it's still razor sharp.
Yeah, I use my Jolly Roger all the time. I cut everything with the Jolly Roger. Just a great little utility knife. It's
one of the best EDC knives that I've ever had, and y'all have heard me say it many times before. I've had Kershaw, Benchmade, Gerber, Schrade. Schrade. I've had them all, and this is up there. If not the best, it sure as heck is tied for the best. And when you start comparing it to dollar versus dollar, what you're going to pay for a Spyderco versus this, you hands down all day long, this $45 knife will perform just as well as a $245 Spyderco.
Yeah.
Because you're paying for that name. That's it. That's all you're paying for on a Spyderco. Spyderco is not that much better than a Kershaw or a Benchmade or a CRKT. I've got, my brother gave me a little CRKT for Christmas, and that's a great little knife. I love that little knife. But I carry this over that. If I just need a little small knife to put in my pocket, I might carry that just because it's about like yay big. It's about the size of the privateer, and I just don't have a privateer. So if I need something that small, that's what I'm gonna carry. But 9.5 times out of 10, what I'm reaching for is this right here.
The privateer is more hard. It's harder steel. The privateer is a great knife, but I wouldn't use it for some of the stuff you use the Jolly Roger for. You'd probably break the tip off of a privateer.
And we know somebody who did that.
It's more of a scalpel, whereas
Yeah.
the Jolly Roger is a daily use, cut anything you come into contact with knife. The privateer is much more rigid steel, harder steel, and while it is stupid sharp, it's more. I would use it for more delicate things.
Well, and to further that point, you wouldn't take a scalpel and use it to strip wire.
Right.
It's sharp enough to, but you wouldn't. You know, a scalpel is built for one purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Built to lay you open. Same thing with a razor. I mean, you know, a razor's sharp, but there's things that just being sharp doesn't.
Right.
You got to have some. Sometimes you got to have some heft. You got to have some backbone.
They've got quite a few blemished blades that you can pick up on sale, and the discount code still applies to the blemished blades. You can get some really damn good deals on the blemished blades section.
Yep. So get those good deals, and then when you go to checkout,
use discount code DA Roberts 10 for 10% off your entire order.
Yeah, and that stacks up with the
blemished blades.
With the blemished blades, so you can really save yourself a lot of money on the blade if you shop around a little bit for it on there. Look for it on the blemish section if you find it, and then put that code in there, DA Roberts 10.
Yeah, you can use that link on the screen right there, or just go to scallywagtactical.com, and at checkout, it'll ask you for a discount code. Use discount code DA Roberts 10, and that'll get you 10% off your entire order. And their shipping is quick.
Very quick.
It does not take long to get blades you've ordered.
I ordered my Orca after our show on a Saturday night, and what I say by Monday afternoon, DA, I think,
yeah,
it was on my doorstep.
And our other affiliate member is Brock Blades. Ken Brock is a retired cop. He builds his knives custom in a shop behind his house. Scallywag blades are amazing blades, but they are mass produced. If you get two of their knives, they're identical. Ken's blades are all handmade, one of a kind. No two are exactly alike. And you can also have a custom blade built. You can choose the blade type, the blade shape, the material you're using, the type of handle, the color of the handle. There's so many choices to customize. And if you have a friend or a loved one who is an outdoorsman or a first responder or in the military, or even just somebody that just enjoys a good pocket knife, Brock Blades is a custom knife, is a gift that'll be treasured. And these are not meant to sit on a shelf and look pretty. These are meant to be used. Just absolutely high quality, fantastic blades, and Ken stands behind them. So if you go to brockblades.com, don't forget to use discount code Cryptid10 for 10% off your order, and that includes custom builds. When you order a custom, just make sure you say in the description that you heard about the show. You heard about Brock Blades on the show here on DA Ex Machina, and he'll make sure you get 10% off your custom order as well.
And he has some interesting handle material.
Yes, he does.
One such handle material he showed it to me when I was over there. And, it looked just like a blob at first when I was looking at it. He said, "You know what that is?" And I'm like, "No." He's got a buddy that works at a Ford body shop. So all the paint, different colors of paint that runs down and hardens. They scrape that up off the floor, and it's just like stacking micarta, but they call it fortium. And it shaves when you start cutting the grooves into it. It cuts down to those different layers and different colors. But it's just, once that paint's cured and hardened, it's just as hard as micarta. So he can actually make you handles out of this stuff they call fortium. That blew my mind how cool that was. Yeah. It's a handle made out of paint from a Ford dealership where it's overspray basically. and what's left over in the paint guns when they get done with it.
That's freaking wild.
So anything that come out of that, you're never going to get the same look twice. That just adds
It'd be
to that.
unique every time.
Yeah.
I know we got a whole bunch of comments. Let me see if I missed anything. There's one other thing I'd like to talk about. Oh, Vicky, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and we hope you come back with us. We'll be back on Saturday as well. I should have the show up for Saturday, probably tomorrow. Noah and I are planning on going out in the morning and shooting a promo video for it. So tomorrow, sometime, you should see the announcement on what the show is going to be about. But we'll be back on Saturday night. One thing I want to talk about is something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's the 22 a Day Foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that is 22 too many. And if you look at the Officer Down Memorial page, you'll also find the number of officers we lose in the line of duty, and that includes officer suicide, and the numbers are staggering. So that's why I'm a big supporter of the Till Valhalla Project and the 22 a Day Foundation. Both of those are charities that really go out there and try to bring an end to veteran suicide. With a lot of these bigger charities, if you donate $100 to one of these bigger charities, $1 might actually make it to the end of the veterans. But Till Valhalla Project and the 22 a Day Foundation, like 95% of what they take in goes right back into helping veterans, and they buy service dogs and help with therapy bills and help buy artificial limbs. So it's a hell of a deal because we are losing way too many service members. And if you've got a friend or a loved one, or just somebody close to you that was a first responder or served in the military, check on them once in a while, because the voice on the other end of the line or that one text message might be what keeps them off the edge. As again, 22 a day is entirely too many. So, reach out to your friends and let them know you're thinking about them. Let them know you care about them. Because again, your voice might be that voice on the other end of the line might keeps them off the edge for the day. It's again, that's something that's just very near and dear to me. We're going to end the show with a toast. It's something that we've started doing, and it's something I want to continue doing. There's an old Irish drinking song called "The Parting Glass," and it's played at the end of the night in Irish pubs around the world. But when you really look at the lyrics, it's talking about more than just saying goodnight with a raised glass at the end of the evening when everyone's going home from the pub. It's talking about raising a glass to those that aren't here anymore for us to raise the glass to. So it doesn't matter what you got a glass of, whether it's water, orange juice, coffee, something alcoholic, whatever you're drinking, just raise your glass as we give a toast from the parting glass to all of those we've lost along the way. And the toast goes like this: but since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call, good night and joy be to you all. Good night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on Ex Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.